Hey everybody, Josh here. We've come a long way in how to set up an easy and powerful smart home. Throughout this series, we've talked about all kinds of things, choosing what type of devices you want, the ecosystem, installing the devices, doing the automations, which is one of my favorite steps, and even the unique devices in the last video. But in this final video, we're going to talk about something else. What happens when things go wrong? Because smart homes are a technology. So sometimes things do go sideways. A light doesn't turn on when you expect it, a door doesn't lock, an automation doesn't trigger, or something else happens like it just goes offline for no reason at all. And today we're going to talk about what to do when this happens to you. Welcome back to Josh's Smart Home. And if you're new here, I've been building out my smart home for about a decade now, and I want to share with you what I've learned along the way to make your home smarter. So, of course, we know that a really powerful smart home is reliable and resilient, but that's not always the case. Sometimes there are hiccups. Building a smart home is one thing, but maintaining it is quite another. And today, we're going to talk about empowering you to make sure your smart home is resilient and reliable. So, here we go. The first tip, and don't throw any tomatoes at me, please, but did you try to turn it off and turn it back on again? Yes, I know. Of course you did, but did you really? And the reason I ask this is sometimes it's not that simple to turn it off and turn it back on because it might not be the device. Maybe it's your home internet, your ISP modem, maybe it's your router, maybe it is the device. Maybe it's even your smart home platform of choice that's causing the hiccup. So restart everything. And when I'm talking about restarting, I typically like to turn it off, give it a good 10 seconds to run out any power that's on anything, on the board or anything, and then plug it back in or reinsert the battery, whatever the case may be. And sometimes that might be like with our Yarbo, the data center for our Yarbo is actually up on the roof, but lucky for me, it's power over Ethernet. So I can actually restart it from our router. So our Unify Dream Machine Special Edition allows me to cut the power and restart the individual ports. So I don't have to reset everything if I think it's actually the device level. So I can restart just that and see how things go. So try to, turn it off and turn it back on again. Again, don't throw your tomatoes at me, but there is a good reason that IT always starts with this attempt because most of the time it's actually going to resolve your issues, but make sure you do it across the board. The internet connection, the device itself, and even your smart home platform of choice. Do it everywhere to ensure that everything has a fresh start. Another common troubleshooting tip that will resolve issues in your smart home is checking out your network. Are you getting the speeds that your ISP has promised you? Do you have your router placed centrally? Do you have a mesh network that's really covering the property that you're looking to have the smart devices in? Is your Wi-Fi network just overloaded? That's what happened to us throughout the years. It started with our Google Nest devices. We had the new Google Nest Mesh network, and we ended up overloading those. It was somewhere around 75 devices where they just became unresponsive for some of our devices, and our devices would fall off, and it didn't work out for us. At that point, we upgraded to the Amazon Eero brand mesh network, which did work for a few more devices, but again, we maxed it out. This time, somewhere around 100 devices, it stopped working reliably for us. And that's when we went the Pro option. Really designed for commercial installations is the Unify. We bought the Dream Machine Special Edition, and we have a couple of U6 access points, as well as a U7 outdoor, which really makes all the difference. So the pro tip here is check your network, and if you have a lot of smart devices, considering expanding your network with a commercial level option that will handle your devices. Next, I have a maintenance tip, and that is keep everything updated. Please make sure you're updating your firmware when it's released or your operating systems. Make sure you're applying all the updates as you see fit. What I like to do with Home Assistant is I don't like to go to the point 0 or point 1 versions. I like to wait until it's like a point 3, point 4, point 5, so that if there were any bugs or anything, they're probably resolved at that point. So that's the monthly cadence that I do. If you need help, set a reminder. It's pretty easy to say, like the 20th of each month, put a reminder in your calendar to make sure everything's up to date. This is not only an issue with bugs or issues in the software, but this could be a major security or privacy concern. You don't want to have holes in your security of your smart home. There's a lot of important data, and you don't want to open up any of your devices to intruders either. Just no reason to do that. Keep everything updated. Another maintenance tip that can really make a difference in your smart home is monitoring batteries and sensors. Of course, you don't want your smart devices to not have any batteries that are, reliable or charged or whatever the case may be. What I do is I have an automation that triggers every single day. It checks the statuses of the batteries that I want to know about, and it sends me a text message at, a certain time each day, and it either says all the batteries are healthy or these batteries are the ones that need to be replaced at this time, or it'll just tell me this one's below 50%. However, I want to have it set up for those, which makes it pretty easy to make sure that I'm monitoring my batteries, or if something goes offline, I'm aware of it and I can replace the battery as needed. As far as the sensors go, think about the placement and make sure you're cleaning them off if it's appropriate. At some point, they're going to get dirty and dusty, and you don't want to have that on your sensor. So clean it off, make sure it's pointed in the right direction, make sure your water leak sensors are at the lowest point or directly below where something would leak. Just use common sense on these. So that one's pretty easy regarding the placement and the cleaning of the sensors. The pro tip for this maintenance is keeping a stash of batteries on hand. You wouldn't believe how often you have a battery issue and then you don't have that type of battery. Keep the AAAs, the AA's, the CR2032s, the 123As, whatever it is that you use when in your devices. Keep those on hand. Make sure you always have a stash. I tend to just buy like a 12 pack from Amazon. It arrives at my house, and I usually do that when I have one or two left in the last pack, so I never run out of batteries, because it's never a convenient time when you're on that last battery. You used it up, forgot about it, and then you need it again for something. It always seems to be in most inconvenient time. So don't put yourself in that situation. Have spare batteries. Beyond the tips I already mentioned, here's some other proactive, steps that you can take to make sure your home's smart. And the first one is documentation. You might think, documentation for a smart home? Yeah, definitely. You should have the list of, what you have in your smart home, the manufacturers, the logins as appropriate. What happens if something happens tomorrow and you fall over and your spouse or somebody else needs to take over. You need to have that stuff readily available to those living in your house in case of an emergency, that they aren't locked out of the house or the alarm's just constantly going off because they don't know how to control something and it was triggered based on, a bad setup or an erroneous, trigger because there's somebody new at your house and they didn't know what to do. You don't want to have these situations. So make sure you document everything. I like to keep a list of how I have things integrated. So whether it's directly into Home Assistant or if it's through one of the voice assistants, how that integration's working, where my automations are, because there's a couple that I have outside of Home Assistant, but most of them are within the confines of Home Assistant. So just having all that information there. Another tip is review your smart home every few months. Are there devices that are offline? Maybe you don't even have them anymore. Delete those. Or if they're offline and they need a new battery, address that. Maybe they aren't connected to the Wi-Fi. Whatever the situation is, monitor those devices and make sure you're, checking those out at least, every month or two, so you don't have any rogue devices or devices that you expect are working but really aren't. You also want to go through your automations and make sure everything's still relevant there and you don't have some old rogue automations. You can certainly just disable them so that you don't lose, how you programmed it. But you want to consider that every few months. We actually do a couple of things different between the winter and the summer. For example, we have the Christmas decorations and Christmas trees. So we have different timers that we utilize during the winter time, during Christmas season in particular. And then during the summer, we have some like things, some lights that attract bugs, and we have a different timer set up that we want to utilize for those. So we adjust those a couple times a year. So it's always staying up on your automations, and you can enable, disable, have the winter automation, summer automation. So it's pretty simple to just hit enable or disable, and it's not a lot of maintenance there, but it's important to stay on top of that. And another tip, if you can't get something working and you restarted it and everything else, then you don't know what to do. Sometimes I've found success in deleting it and then re-adding it back. So it's a fresh start too when you create that new connection. So there's another avenue you might want to try if you have a device that's not quite working the way you expect it. Troubleshooting and maintenance are an integral part of owning and maintaining a smart home. You don't want to have those rogue devices. You don't want to have things that are offline. You just want everything to work seamlessly and not be an inconvenience. The whole point of a smart home is to do what you need when you need it done. So you don't want to have devices that aren't online. You don't want to have devices with hiccups. You don't want to have all these connectivity issues from, a bad mesh network. You just don't want to have these things. So by following these tips and maintenance items, you're going to, prevent a lot of these issues to start with. And if you do have anything that's beyond, what we talked about here, if you have any tips of your own, make sure you share those below in the comments. I love to read what you guys say and interact with that. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you didn't already. It really helps me out and I appreciate you. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.